Hi again. We're talking about Chapter 2 now, and the emphasis in Chapter 2 is to draw a stronger relationship between operations management and the supply chain, especially as we mentioned in the last chapter, the global impact of that relationship. If you remember, I mentioned that supply chain strategy has kind of reversed roles with operations and has become the driver in many cases. We will talk more about that in class, and actually helps form the operations strategy and models. At the same time, as we study operations, we have to identify its objectives and analyze how operations determines what strategies they will take, all based on environmental analysis and what their strategic objectives are. We always look to give you definitions in each of the topics we talk about, and operations strategy is one of the important definitions. And the author here defines it as a consistent pattern of business decisions, as opposed to single business decisions that are done just for a particular situation. A strategy occurs when you make those decisions repeatedly and try to develop a competitive position in that case. And where you're going to use it is in the transformation system, as well as the supply chains that we mentioned earlier. Good example is McDonald's, which has now become a very global example. We will talk about that in class, so we're not going to go and analyze it at this point in any depth. There are traditional versions of supply chain and global operations, and then there's a more contemporary, or what we call today's global operations. We'll make a distinction between those two, and our emphasis will be the role of the global aspect of supply chain as well as competition. In doing so, we have to consider a lot of factors, things like logistics about facilities and plant locations, especially on a worldwide basis, what products and service configurations are involved, and especially with relationship to sourcing. The sourcing network becomes a much more complicated issue when you get into this level. And then you have to consider things like product design and the processes, again, at the global level to make some of the decisions here, as well as demand and other aspects. You will find when you look at it country by country or parts of the world or regions, that sometimes the input changes and you have to determine different strategies based on that. Okay, a supply chain strategy is one of the most important parts. Many people think that in our past history, the wars that we have won and lost have been really based more on our logistics and supply chain, more so than any other aspect of a war. And I hold to that theory too. And it's not just a military operation, but it's all operations that are dependent on their supply chain network. You can do it with respect to products, and in some cases they're established products, in some cases they're new products that could change the logistics of your supply chain, and we'll look at that. One of the key things that we'll emphasize is what we call distinctive competence. What that basically means is, how are you different from anybody else? Because for strategic success and competitive success, you have to draw that difference between you and any other competitors. Otherwise, what is it that would make somebody buy from your competitor rather than you? Those distinctions are usually based on 3 or 4 major elements, which we'll talk about. And those elements come down to cost, quality, delivery, or what we call response time, and flexibility. Each of those are very important as you develop a strategy to identify and analyze how they play into the particular market and industry that you're trying to participate in. There are examples of that in the case books that we'll be talking about and analyzing in a lot more depth. And one of the most important things, especially that we're going to emphasize in this chapter, is the idea of linkage as well as alignment, but especially linkage. What we're trying to do is draw a very strong bridge between the operation functions, its framework, its processes, and the business strategies that we develop. And again, you have to identify the connection between those two if you're going to be successful in your operations. That gets driven all the way down to the product level as well as the processes themselves. We're going to go into as much depth as we can in each of these dimensions to appropriately analyze the impact of these factors. One of the things in today's world that you hear a lot about is the concept of sustainability, and some people translate that to the greening of operations. Actually, those two words have individual meanings. Sustainability really deals with the ability to survive and be here even throughout the change in the world and the factors. The greening is a way that you survive and become sustainable. That is, you try to adapt yourself more to nature and the environment even while it changes. And you have to look at it in a lot of detail aspects, such as your product, your processes, and even your suppliers and competitors and customers to really completely analyze that. Okay, in summary, we're going to try to identify the linkage between things like the environment, the supply chain, your own strategic business plan, and how you're going to implement your strategies in order to tie things together in this chapter.